Think Like a Warrior. The 5 Inner Beliefs That Make You Unstoppable by Darrin Donnelly is not really a sports book. It is a book about identity. Beneath the coaching stories, championship lessons, and motivational narrative lies a deeper psychological argument. Human performance is determined less by talent, circumstances, resources, or luck than by the beliefs a person carries into adversity. Donnelly presents this philosophy through the fictional story of Chris McNeely, a struggling football coach whose life appears to be collapsing from every direction simultaneously. Chris is not simply facing a losing season, he is facing the destruction of his self-image. His team is losing, his job security is disappearing, his marriage is suffering, his confidence has evaporated. Financial pressure is mounting. Every morning feels heavier than the one before. Every loss seems to confirm his growing suspicion that he is failing not only as a coach, but as a man. The most dangerous part of Chris's situation is not the external problems themselves. It is the psychological interpretation he attaches to those problems. He begins viewing himself as trapped. He becomes consumed by blame. He focuses on bad referees, weak players, difficult circumstances, limited resources, and unfair situations. Gradually, he develops what Donnelly calls the victim mindset. The victim mindset is one of the central concepts of the book. According to Donnelly, victims are not defined by suffering. Everyone suffers. Victims are defined by how they interpret suffering. The victim sees obstacles as proof of limitation. They focus on what they cannot control. They spend enormous amounts of mental energy analyzing external factors. They become experts in excuses. Their conversations revolve around unfairness, bad luck, incompetent people, unfortunate timing, and circumstances beyond their influence. As this mindset develops, personal power disappears. Motivation declines because effort appears meaningless. Confidence erodes because outcomes seem dependent upon forces outside personal influence. The victim becomes psychologically paralyzed. The warrior mindset operates according to an entirely different philosophy. A warrior does not deny reality. A warrior does not pretend challenges do not exist. A warrior simply refuses to surrender personal responsibility because of those challenges. The warrior accepts a brutal truth. Life is not obligated to be fair. Adversity is guaranteed. Mistakes will happen. People will disappoint you. Circumstances will change unexpectedly. Yet regardless of who caused the problem, the warrior accepts responsibility for responding to it. This distinction changes everything. The victim asks, "Why is this happening to me?" The warrior asks, "What am I going to do about it?" The victim searches for blame. The warrior searches for solutions. The victim waits for circumstances to improve. The warrior improves themselves regardless of circumstances. The transformation of Chris begins when he experiences a series of dream encounters with legendary coaches. Each coach represents a specific mental framework that gradually reconstructs his identity from the inside out. The first visitor is John Wooden, widely considered one of the greatest coaches in sports history. Wooden's legacy was built not merely upon winning championships, but upon redefining success itself. Most people measure success through outcomes. They focus on trophies, rankings, promotions, revenue, recognition, and external validation. Wooden rejected this definition. He taught that true success is peace of mind, resulting from the knowledge that you made the effort to become the best you were capable of becoming. At first glance, this sounds simplistic. In reality, it is psychologically revolutionary. Human beings often attach emotional stability to outcomes they cannot fully control. Athletes obsess over victories. Entrepreneurs obsess over revenue. Students obsess over grades. Professionals obsess over promotions. The problem is that outcomes always contain variables beyond personal influence. Competitors exist. Markets fluctuate. Referees make mistakes. Economies change. Customers behave unpredictably. Therefore, when emotional well-being becomes attached to outcomes, anxiety becomes unavoidable. Wooden taught Chris to focus on only 2 things: effort, and attitude. These are the only variables fully under personal control. A warrior evaluates success according to inputs rather than outputs. Did I prepare completely? Did I give maximum effort? Did I maintain the proper attitude? If the answer is yes, then success has already been achieved, regardless of the scoreboard. This principle creates extraordinary psychological freedom. Anxiety decreases because attention shifts away from uncontrollable outcomes. Performance improves because mental energy becomes concentrated on execution rather than speculation. Confidence grows because confidence is no longer dependent upon winning. It becomes dependent upon preparation. Every morning, the warrior asks 2 questions. First, what effort will I bring today? Second, what attitude will I bring today? Everything else becomes secondary. The second visitor is Buck O'Neill, whose lesson revolves around joy. O'Neill's life contained extraordinary adversity. He faced discrimination, exclusion, and systemic barriers throughout much of his career. Yet despite these obstacles, he became famous for his enthusiasm and positivity. His lesson is frequently misunderstood. Positivity is often portrayed as emotional denial. O'Neill taught something entirely different. He believed joy is a competitive advantage. Most people allow circumstances to dictate attitude. If events are favorable, they feel positive. If events become difficult, they become negative. Warriors reverse this relationship. They choose their attitude first, and then face circumstances from that emotional position. From a psychological perspective, this approach produces profound benefits. Positive emotional states broaden perception. They increase creativity. They improve resilience. They strengthen social relationships. They enhance problem-solving ability. Negative emotional states narrow attention and reduce flexibility. Thus, maintaining enthusiasm during adversity is not naive, it is strategic. O'Neill teaches Chris that energy is contagious. Leaders transfer emotional states to everyone around them. A coach who enters practice defeated infects the entire team with discouragement. A leader who enters with enthusiasm generates momentum. Warriors therefore treat attitude as a responsibility rather than a reaction. They understand that every room they enter becomes influenced by the emotional energy they bring. The third visitor is Herb Brooks. Brooks is remembered primarily for leading the United States hockey team to its historic victory over the Soviet Union during the 1980 Winter Olympics, often called the Miracle on Ice. Brooks teaches Chris about vision and the danger of realistic thinking. Society often praises realism. People are encouraged to set achievable goals, avoid disappointment, and maintain reasonable expectations. Brooks challenges this philosophy directly. Extraordinary accomplishments require extraordinary beliefs. If goals remain limited by current circumstances, transformation becomes impossible. The miracle on ice was not created by realism. On paper, the American team had little chance of defeating the Soviet Union. The Soviet program dominated international hockey. Most observers expected a comfortable Soviet victory. Brooks refused to adopt this narrative. He demanded that his players believe in a future that external evidence did not support. This lesson extends far beyond sports. Entrepreneurs launching disruptive companies rarely possess evidence guaranteeing success. Inventors introducing new technologies often face skepticism. Artists creating original work encounter criticism. Leaders implementing major change frequently encounter resistance. Warriors understand that external validation often arrives after commitment rather than before it. Brooks teaches the importance of protecting vision from cynicism. Every ambitious goal attracts doubters. Some doubts come from others. Some come from internal dialogue. The warrior learns to distinguish constructive feedback from limiting beliefs. Not every opinion deserves equal attention. A powerful vision requires psychological protection. The fourth visitor is Bear Bryant. Bryant's lesson centers on persistence and mental toughness. According to Bryant, greatness is not primarily a function of talent. It is a function of endurance. Most people underestimate how often success depends simply upon continuing after others quit. Mental toughness is frequently misunderstood as emotional hardness. Bryant viewed it differently. True toughness means maintaining commitment despite discomfort. It means continuing after enthusiasm fades. It means persisting through uncertainty, criticism, setbacks, fatigue, and disappointment. The psychological significance of this lesson cannot be overstated. Human beings naturally seek comfort. The brain interprets difficulty as a signal to conserve energy. Consequently, many perceived limits are psychological, rather than physical. People stop not because they cannot continue, but because continuing feels uncomfortable. Bryant teaches Chris that resilience develops through repeated exposure to challenge. Every time an individual confronts difficulty without retreating, their self-concept changes. They begin seeing themselves as someone capable of enduring hardship. Over time, this identity becomes increasingly powerful. Confidence no longer depends upon favorable circumstances. It depends upon demonstrated resilience. The warrior therefore views obstacles differently. Rather than asking how to avoid difficulty, they ask how difficulty can strengthen character. Every challenge becomes a training ground. Every setback becomes an opportunity to develop greater toughness. The final visitor is Vince Lombardi, whose teachings focus on self-talk, visualization, and conviction. Lombardi understood that the most important conversation in a person's life occurs internally. Every day, individuals engage in thousands of private thoughts. These thoughts gradually shape identity. Negative self-talk functions like psychological poison. Statements such as, "I can't do this," "I'm not good enough," or "I'll probably fail," create mental environments hostile to performance. The brain responds to repeated messages regardless of whether those messages are accurate. Lombardi teaches Chris to consciously direct internal dialogue. Warriors do not leave thoughts unattended. They intentionally replace destructive narratives with empowering ones. This does not mean lying to oneself. It means choosing beliefs that create strength rather than weakness. Visualization plays an important role within this framework. The brain responds powerfully to imagined experiences. Athletes have long used visualization to improve performance, because mentally rehearsing success activates many of the same neural pathways involved in actual execution. Lombardi encourages Chris to repeatedly envision successful performance before it occurs. Over time, fear loses power because the mind becomes familiar with success. Confidence increases because achievement feels psychologically rehearsed. The warrior learns that victory is often created internally before it appears externally. When these 5 lessons combine, they create a complete psychological operating system. Focus on effort and attitude. Choose enthusiasm deliberately. Protect ambitious visions. Persist relentlessly. Control internal dialogue. Together, these beliefs transform identity. The difference between the victim and warrior becomes obvious in daily life. The victim focuses on problems, while the warrior focuses on responses. The victim complains about circumstances, while the warrior adapts. The victim seeks certainty before acting, while the warrior acts despite uncertainty. The victim interprets failure as personal inadequacy, while the warrior interprets failure as feedback. The victim allows external events to determine emotional states, while the warrior chooses emotional states independently. The victim speaks the language of blame. The warrior speaks the language of responsibility. The victim waits for motivation. The warrior creates momentum through action. For modern professionals, athletes, entrepreneurs, and creators, Donnelly's framework can be translated into a practical daily system. Every morning begins with mental alignment. Before checking email, social media, news, or messages, the warrior establishes control over attention. They remind themselves that success today will be measured by effort and attitude rather than external results. They identify the most important challenge ahead and mentally rehearse confronting it with confidence. Throughout the day, the warrior applies what could be called the friction filter. Whenever unexpected setbacks occur, they immediately ask the John Wooden question: what part of this situation is under my control? Attention shifts instantly away from blame and toward action. Emotional energy is preserved because it is directed toward productive responses. The warrior also maintains a naysayer shield. This does not mean ignoring all criticism. It means carefully controlling influences. Negative environments, cynical conversations, defeatist thinking, and constant exposure to pessimistic voices gradually weaken conviction. Warriors intentionally spend more time around builders, creators, optimists, and disciplined performers. They curate information consumption with the same care they would use when selecting food. Finally, every evening concludes with reflection. Most people evaluate their day based on outcomes. Warriors evaluate their day based on inputs. Did I bring maximum effort? Did I maintain the right attitude? Did I persist when challenges appeared? Did I protect my vision? Did I control my internal dialogue? This process reinforces the understanding that identity is built through repeated behaviors rather than isolated results. The ultimate message of Think Like a Warrior is that unstoppable people are not born with superior talent, intelligence, resources, or luck. They simply adopt a different relationship with adversity. They refuse to surrender responsibility. They focus relentlessly on controllable factors. They choose empowering attitudes. They protect ambitious dreams. They develop resilience through repeated challenge. They master their internal conversations. Over time, these beliefs become habits. Habits become identity. Identity becomes destiny. According to Donnelly, the warrior's greatest advantage is not physical strength, strategic brilliance, or natural talent. It is the unwavering conviction that no matter what happens externally, they retain the power to choose their response, and that choice ultimately determines the quality of their life.